Welcome back to Rhythm Basics for Guitar. This is Hunter with anyonecanplayguitar.org with Lesson 2. So, in Lesson 1, we laid the foundation for everything that's going to come next. So go back and watch that if you're not 100% on that kind of stuff. Alright, the things that we talked about were the beat, the concept of a beat, which is a very abstract thing. It's just a sound, it's a pulse, it's something that happens at a regular interval that we can feel. We hear it, but it's really more about what we feel, right? When you go dancing, or even if you're not a dancer but you listen to music and you start tapping your foot or bobbing your head, who cares if you would consider yourself someone who is rhythmically inclined? Everyone, I would say, everyone has this innate understanding of what a beat is, even if they don't think that they do, right? You're tapping your foot, you're bobbing your head, you know, maybe it's not perfectly even, but you're moving because of what you're hearing. And that's what the beat is all about. It's making you move, making you feel something. Alright, so the key with writing and reading rhythms and communicating your musical ideas is being able to take that sort of intangible, abstract concept of the beat and make it something we can see and write onto a piece of paper or whatever. And that's what we did last time. We looked at this thing over here called the time signature, and then we looked at some examples of some very basic rhythms. We did whole notes, we did half notes, we did quarter notes. Alright, so before we get to the main point of this video, which is the all-important 8th note, we're going to mix and match some of our notes here just to see what different rhythms might sound like. Alright, so I'm going to erase this and give us 2 measures to work with instead of 1, because most songs are more than 1 measure long, because 4 beats is not very much time. So we're going to write our time signature, 4/4 time, and I'm going to give us 2 measures. Alright, great. So I got 2 spaces. Now, initially I had given us little dotted lines to show you where the beats are. You don't have to do that. I did that just for illustrative purposes. In the future, you don't have to do that. Alright, so we can imagine, though, that we have 4 equal spaces in each of these measures. Alright, so I'm going to start out with a quarter note. A quarter note, again, takes up 1 beat, so that's beat 1. Going to play another quarter note. That also takes up a beat, but we already finished beat 1, therefore we are on now beat 2. So the third thing I'll do on beat 3 is I'll put a half note. That's on beat 3. Alright, now like we talked about, a half note takes up 2 beats. So I got beat 4 over here, but beat 4 is already full, because this half note is so big it takes up both beats 3 and 4. So there's no room for anything else to put in that measure. So that's 1 beat, 2 beats, 3, 4 beats. So if you add them all up, they equal 4. And that's what we want. Great. Alright, and then the next measure, I'll put a whole note. And a whole note takes up all 4 beats. So I got these beats, but they're already full. There's nothing else I can fit into that measure. So let's get our beat going. Ah, yes. We'll choose another chord. We'll do C. Sticking with basic chords here. And I'm going to count in, and I'm going to play this rhythm. So 1 beat, 1 beat, 2 beats, 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Quarter, quarter, half, whole. 2, 3, 4. 1 beat, 2 beats, 4 beats. Alright, a couple more. Last one. Cool. Makes sense? So if I had just played that rhythm without the aid of that beat, you might not get the sense of where that beat is, right? You might not realize that it's a very repetitious, a very even, repeated thing. doing the same thing every time, and the beat helps me do that at the same speed. In musical terms, we call the speed at which we play the tempo. So we play at the same tempo, keeps things nice and even, and generally, evenness is nice, right? When we listen to music and it's even, we can get into that feeling I keep talking about, and we don't have to, it doesn't jerk us around. There will be songs, I'm sure you've heard some before, where they, maybe the tempo slows down or speeds up or does something wacky that you weren't expecting. These are good tricks for, I would say, advanced musical writing. You kind of play around with what's common and what's expected when you're first writing music or first learning music, and then you can start to break the rules like anything. Right? You learn the rules, then you break the rules. But this rhythm helped me play this. That beat helped me play this rhythm nice and evenly, keep everything nice and even. All right, great. But it wasn't very exciting. It was kind of slow. Even the tempo was kind of, mid-tempo. But I'm dealing with some long, stretched out notes. Now those notes are important and they're very useful, but they're not very exciting because not a lot is happening, right? So let's look at our next type of note that we see very often in music. So we are going to continue our pattern of just taking the previous note we talked about and splitting it in half. We did the whole note. We split that in half to get the half note. We split the half note in half to get the quarter, and we split the quarter note in half to get the eighth note. So an eighth note is a little special because it can be by itself, and it would look like that. It looks kind of like a quarter note, except it's got a little flag sticking off of it. It's all fancy. Or, and more commonly, or I'd say maybe just as commonly, eighth notes can be paired up. They can be connected together with one horizontal line, like that. You see them in a pair. And either way, you see them both ways. So that's one eighth note all by its lonesome, and this is a pair of eighth notes. So this is the eighth note. Alright, so let's think about our fractions and our basic math here. Whole note got 4 beats, half note gets 2, quarter note gets 1, half of a quarter note is an eighth note. So how many beats does that eighth note get? A half of a beat. Boom. Alright, we're getting a little bit more complicated now, because now we're not talking about whole numbers anymore. Now we're splitting things even more. But it's not that bad. So what I've done, what I will do, is in measure 1, we'll start us off with something very straightforward, and we'll just do 4 quarter notes. So this is what we finished up last lesson with. And this is basically me just playing a note or strumming a chord every single beat, right? Every time that bass drum hits, I'm strumming, because every quarter note takes up 1 beat. It doesn't have a long duration. And a half note is what I would get if I took that quarter note and I split it in half. So in each of these 4 beats over here, instead of having 1 quarter note, I'm going to put 2 eighth notes. And I'm going to connect them to show that they are eighth notes. If I just left them disconnected, they would look like quarter notes, and that's not what we want. So by connecting them, I am telling the reader, the player, that these are eighth notes. So in each beat, I have now 2 notes, and they're both eighth notes, just like that. Alright, but now I gotta do something else. I gotta erase this 1, 2, 3, 4 down here. The reason is, prior to looking at eighth notes, we were talking about complete beats, right? You had 1 beat, or 2 beats, or 4 beats, but we're talking about whole beats and whole numbers, right? They're easy to understand. But when you start talking about eighth notes, you're splitting the beats in half, so you're dividing them further. So I still have 4 beats because our time signature tells me that every single measure is going to have 4 beats in it. Unless that time signature changes, then it's always got to be true until the song is over, or until we change. So that means over here I've still got 4 beats. There's beat 1, 2, 3, and 4. And on each beat, instead of having 1 note, I have 2 small notes, and those are our eighth notes. So when we're trying to count this rhythm, it becomes necessary for us to assign a word or a sound to that other half of the beat so we can identify it. So we can say like, hey, we're going to come in at this part of the, the second half of this beat or the first half of this beat, right? And then what we do there is we use the word and. Now personally I like to use a plus sign because it's quick and easy to draw, but do not let that confuse you. We are doing no addition here. This is just the word and, right? Some people use an ampersand, some people write the word and, whatever you float your boat. I like the plus sign. Alright, so now we have 1 and, 2 and, 3 and, 4 and. So now I'm counting all of those parts of the beat, both the beat itself and the space between the beats, right? Beat 1 and then the and of 1, and then beat 2 and then the and of 2 and so on. And the only reason we have to do that is because we're talking about notes that are so small that we can fit multiple notes into one beat. Alright, so this is where, up to now, we've been talking about rhythm in general. Really, it kind of applies to any instrument. It definitely applies to any instrument. But now we're talking specifically with guitar. So one unique thing about the guitar is we strum often, or even when we're picking, right? We can go both directions. I can strum down, and I can strum back up, right? The physical nature of me having to move my arm down to strum means that my arm is now down here, and in order to strum again, I gotta move. I gotta move back up. So you can either just strum down, or you can strum down and up. So you can go both directions. So as a general convention, and it won't always apply, but in general, when you're playing quarter notes or half notes or whole notes like we had done initially, you will strum in a downward motion. And the reason for that is that generally quarter notes, half notes, and whole notes, because they are bigger and they are longer notes, they're not played as quickly. So the demand to play them with an up and a down motion is just not there, right? We can afford to just do the down portion without having to worry about wasting any time or energy. So with eighth notes though, because now we're doubling up the beats, it just makes sense to try to take advantage of that up motion and the down motion. So what we're going to do is we're still going to strum down on every beat. So on the 1, 2, 3, and 4, it's a down, just like it is over here. But then between the beats, we're going to strum up. So basically we're strumming up on the ands, on the what they call the off beats, the parts that are not the beat. So on the beat we strum down, off the beat we strum up. So check this out. If I play quarter notes on this D chord here, my arm has to go down and then it has to come back up. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going down every time, but in between the down strums that I'm making, my hand is returning back above the strings so that I can strum down again. So there's already an up motion happening just by playing a bunch of down strums, right? So what we're doing when we play eighth notes is simply, instead of just moving up with no sound, we're just going to take advantage of that motion that we're already making and just strum on that part of the beat. So then to make quarter notes into eighth notes, just strum both directions. So here's quarters, 2, 3, 4, and eighths, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2. So I'm playing the rhythm that we got back there. Quarters and then eighths. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and... Alright, now things get interesting. By introducing this up and down motion, this convention for alternating our strumming on these eighth notes, we can start to take all 4 types of notes that we've seen so far and mix and match them and get all kinds of new rhythms and variety of note sounds and that kind of stuff, right? Which is good. Right? Variety is certainly the spice of music and many other things. Alright, so that's the gist of eighth notes. They're a little funky at first because we're taking that idea that everything takes up a certain amount of beats, and now we're saying, well, anything that takes up half of a beat. So just try not to let that confuse you. It's the same basic idea as any of those other notes. It takes up a certain amount of time, but it's just a very short amount of time. So short that we can put two of them into the space of one beat. And that is because each beat is the size of a quarter, and 2/8 can fit into a quarter. So 2/8 can fit into each beat, which is what we did over here. So we got 8 eighth notes to fit into that measure. Alright, so that's eighth notes in a nutshell. We've covered whole, half, quarter, and eighth. We looked at time signatures. And now in the next lesson we're going to look at all those other sort of odd amounts, like 3 and 1.5 and things like that, durations that we don't otherwise cover with our basic note types. So we're going to be learning about the tie and the dot. So I'll see you in lesson number 3 of Rhythm Basics. Thanks for watching.